Hello, my name is Nordan Kelly, and yesterday I woke up the poorest rich man in America. My phones had been going off like fireworks in Times Square all night. A pulsing of messages, bank alerts, headlines. SEC launches investigation of Kelly dynamics. I put down my coffee and watched the world turn sour. Manhattan was steaming in the morning mist outside my window, and I tried to embrace the silence that pressed against my chest like bulletproof glass. Transparent and unbearable. For the first time, spots appeared in that transparency, small doubts that I had swept under the carpet of speed for years, calling them market noise. I got a call from Connor, my CFO and friend from college. It's a leak. They have the correspondence from the cloud archive, accused of inflating pilot results and covering up the autonomous truck crash in Nevada. I heard my own voice grow strange. The accident was under NDA. We stopped the line. We compensated the family. Connor took a deep breath. Nordan, they say you knew about the recurring defect and pushed the release through the quarterly report. I pushed people to believe we would make it. That's not the same. I replied, not recognizing the laughter that trembled in response in the receiver. I sat down on the edge of the kitchen island, my fingers gripping the edge as if it were a cliff. A video appeared on the screen. A TV anchor speaking my name in the sweet intonation that the media reserves for falling idols. Next to it were footage of a truck in the desert, the flashing of emergency lights, the silhouette of a young man in a photo whose story ended where concrete met metal. It's not fair, I said to the empty apartment. But how fair is it? The silence answered. I felt all the mirrors in the house turn to me, not to reflect my face, but to ask how much truth there was in it. My mother called from Boston, who doesn't read stock columns, but feels the storms of pressure change. Son, are you home? Yes. Don't be afraid to look people in the eye. If you're wrong, tell me. If they betray you, don't let them take your heart. I smiled through the metallic taste of fear. I'm still learning to look at my face. Your face is the wrong headlines, she replied, and there was more therapy in her simple words than in all the coaches combined. By 8 in the morning, the channel vans were parked outside the house, and I was scheduled to speak at an investor conference. Go, Connor said. If you hide, they'll write the ending for you. I put on a dark suit, and for the first time in years felt that the fabric was heavier than my conscience. In the elevator, a woman in a mask recognized me by the look in my eyes. Mr. Kelly, you saved my company with your cheap transportation during the COVID crisis. I nodded. Who didn't I save? I thought aloud. Myself. Added an inner voice that had been silent for a long time. On the way to the stage, a young journalist approached. Why do you always talk about speed? Because speed is a victory over friction. And over conscience? I stopped. Conscience is the only friction that can't be removed with grease. She raised her eyebrows and wrote it down. I felt myself telling the truth, not knowing if I could bear the consequences. I stepped onto the stage into the cold light. Good morning, he said into the microphone. I have something to say. And in that second, when thousands of eyes became one, I realized, the day you lose everything is the day you have a chance to become someone else. But to become, you have to admit who you were. I promised America honest logistics for the future, I continued. Today, America needs an honest answer. And the light grew colder, as if offering me an operating table instead of a podium. I spoke for 20 minutes. Promising full cooperation, an independent audit, and a pause in releases. The audience applauded politely, as one applauds one's own money. And then the light changed. A letter was displayed on the screen, my letter. Push through the release at any cost. The quarterly goal is sacred. The risks are for PR. My palms went cold. I didn't remember the wording. Fake. Taken out of context? I asked Sarah, a lawyer sitting in the front row. She shrugged. The metadata is clean. The letter is from your account. The date coincides with the accident. Relief flashed in the audience's eyes. They always rejoice when tragedy gets a simple face. After lunch, the office resembled a shelter under fire. PR headquarters, lawyers, crisis consultants. The feed was full of bots, anger, memes. A former partner, Ezra Cole, gave an interview. I warned Kelly about the defect. He laughed. He needed the charts, didn't he? Ezra had once sworn that we were brothers to the grave, and I carried him on my shoulders when he was breaking down from his first failure. Now he was carrying me to the grave live. On the stock exchange screens, my name had become a ticker for a downgrade. The markets love a simple story of betrayal. I drove to the shop in New Jersey. "Boss," said Master Renee, "we asked 3 times to stop the test flights. Someone from above called the shots. Signed KD. KD were the initials of our CTO, Kyle Daniels, but they also sounded like my name in old investor slang. King Dollar. Was it all planned?" That evening, a female agent from the DA's office knocked on my door. "Mr. Kelly, you've been served with a subpoena. Please refrain from deleting any media." Her eyes were human, but her words were stone. I signed, and for the first time I felt that with my signature I was surrendering something more important than data, control of the narrative. That wasn't the worst part. Grace, my ex-wife, called on a private line. "Nordan, Ezra got in touch with me. She says she has recordings of you discussing family payments not because of the truth, but because of the risk of lawsuit. Our son reads the news." I covered my face. "Grace, I did what the world of speed demanded. Sometimes the truth comes after ambition. And sometimes it comes after the body of a Nevada guy," she said. Her silence afterward was a verdict louder than any court. By the end of the week, stocks were down 47%. The burgundy charts were eye-popping. The banks were reviewing covenants. The magazines that had called me a delivery justice engineer yesterday were now writing the oligarch of the new logistics. I had been stripped of my seat on the university council, and blue ribbons had appeared on the facade of our R&D campus, a memorial to the dead. I thought, justice or a hunt? And I was afraid of the answer. At 8 in the evening, we gathered the executives. "Someone is working against us from within," Connor said. "Or we have been working against ourselves for a long time," Sarah added quietly. Late at night, Connor entered the apartment without knocking. I found something in an old Git repository. Commits with superadmin rights appeared the day before the accident. The hashes lead to a separate server in Arizona that no one declared. Whose? Formally, a contractor hired by Ezra. And also, in the chain of letters, your words were generated through a sandbox that can copy the author's style. I felt the floor shift. If this is a trap, we've already been eaten. If this is true, then we've been fed lies for years. I washed myself with ice water, but one thing burned in my head. Either I would become a witness against myself, or I would forever remain a crime in someone else's script. We drove to Arizona as if we were running from our own shadows. The server was in an air-conditioned warehouse, among boxes of cheap routers and old drones. The owner was Desert Blue LLC, a name that reeked of phantoms. Connor logged in. The passwords were simple, like someone with a sense of impunity wrote them. Access logs ran across the screen. IP addresses from Washington hotels, private jets, 3 attempts at our campus network. And audio files. "Don't turn it on," I said, and we turned it on anyway. I had long since stopped being the one to press stop on time. Ezra's voice. "If we crank up the brake simulator, the release will go through. The SEC won't be heard. Nordan is still thinking about the quarter." Another voice. Kyle's. "Okay, but K is resisting." Pause. Ezra. "K. Connor? Nonsense. I'm talking about King." I felt my chest tighten. They were changing the meaning and changing me. Connor rubbed his temples. "Can we prove authenticity? We can show the way if we find the one who built it." That evening, in the pub, which smelled of wood and dimly lit, a woman in her 40s approached us. "Are you looking for Desert Blue? My name is Ida Roche. I used to administer their access." She carefully placed a woman's purse on the table. The word truth was embossed on it. "Why do we need you?" I asked. "Because my brother was a trucker. He died on a different road, not yours. And no one answered for his death either. I want to see truth triumph over marketing for once." Her eyes were dry, but her voice had the water that cuts through stone. Ida opened the forbidden door for us. She showed us how they used an old hole in our audit system. During nightly updates of the simulators, the brakes were changing the test parameters, labeling it test injection. The logs were cleaned up through the same Arizona node, and the letters with my phrases were created from templates uploaded to a sandbox that copied the author's style. AI imitation? Yes, not the highest quality. But when the world wants to believe, it doesn't need perfection. She gave us a flash drive. "Here are the keys that will prove that the door existed." "Why?" I asked in the shadows. Ida shrugged. "Because it's faster. Because it's more expensive. Because private foundations pushed. Because your enemies knew that you would be the perfect screen for their perfect lie. I laughed silently. I built the screen myself, Ida. I was the spectator. She looked straight at me. Then either tear it up or stop complaining about the darkness. Connor looked at me like a patient about to undergo a complicated operation. Nordan, this is not just an excuse. This is a minefield map. Every step will hurt. It's better to walk on mines than to stand on someone else's legend, I replied. We went out into the air. The stars above the desert burned unevenly, as if someone had touched them with a finger. What next? Connor asked. I looked at my phone. Incoming calls from the prosecutor's office, from Grace, from some anonymous number with a flashlight icon. The message, ready to testify. Meet me under the Philadelphia Bridge. KD. I felt the old fear and new hope in one breath. Next is to open the screen so wide that even those who have conveniently closed their eyes must see the light. And for the first time in many weeks, I felt not guilt, but purpose. The water under the Philadelphia Bridge was roaring, hard to stop, and so was the news. Kyle stood in the shadows, his gray hoodie on, his hands shaking. I thought you weren't coming, I said. I was waiting for me to stop being afraid, he said. He turned on the recorder. Ezra made me. He says the investors in Austin have already put up money if we pass the release. He's got desert blue on. I signed up because they thought your ambition would sell out anyway. I'm sorry. Apologies are the currency after a default, I breathed. Are you ready to testify officially? Yes, but I'm going to be destroyed. I'm already being destroyed. Let's at least do it with meaning. The next morning I called the board of directors and the press on our campus. I'm temporarily suspending myself as CEO today, I said. We're handing over all the materials to the prosecutor's office. I admit that my ambition created an ecosystem where lies felt safe. But I didn't write those letters or order the simulations to be replaced. And we'll prove it. Voices boomed. An investor in the front row shouted, "You killed the company." I stared at him. It's better to kill lies than to feed them dividends. For a moment, the room fell silent, like after a thunderclap. Senate hearing. Cameras, lapel pins, coffee stains on aides' tips. A senator from Texas asked, "Mr. Kelly, do you admit that your corporate culture pushed people to commit crimes?" I smiled, not amused. I admit that speed can be a form of violence. And I cultivated it. But now I'm bringing the full stack. Letters, logs, audio, Kyle and Ida's testimony. Ezra, opposite, sat as straight as a catalog icon, and only a cracked thumbnail betrayed his nerve. At the end of the meeting, he whispered to me, "You won't survive this storm." Maybe, but at least I won't be its captain. The media poured out poison and honey at the same time. My mother was besieged outside the house. Grace sent a short message, "Tell the truth to the end." I called my son. "Dad, are you bad?" I'm a person who allowed bad things to hide near me and didn't notice in time. Then make others see. I'll try to make it so that they can't not see. I said and felt the words stop being PR and become bones. The climax came in a Nevada courthouse, where the family of the deceased filed a civil lawsuit. I approached them at the meeting. "I'm ashamed," I said. "I'll bring you everything I can. Money, a security fund for independent testing, access to the codes. And also, my testimony against my own company." The young man's mother touched my hand. "I don't want your money. I want the next guy to get home." "Then let my shares be the rails for his path," I replied, and made a public statement transferring a significant portion of my portfolio to a transportation safety trust. That evening I returned to the empty apartment without any pictures. I took them down so that the walls would echo honestly. "You just burned a bridge back," Sarah whispered. "There were no bridges where I was going," I said. I opened the window, and the noise of the city came in like a sea. I became truly afraid, not for the money, but for what the world would be like without my former shadow. And for the first time the crowd didn't whistle. It was silent, and that silence was a space for fresh air. 6 months passed. I lived in a small apartment above a bookstore in Brooklyn, drank cheap coffee, and listened to my own thoughts stop screaming. The company survived without me. A new CEO with iron eyes made painful changes. The stock did not return to its peak, and perhaps never will. But new safety markers appeared on the highways, and in the industry, the Kelly test standard, which forces every autonomous platform to undergo independent verification in 3 states. I was invited to conferences, but more often I went to schools where high school students assemble robots on tables with scratched linoleum. The children asked directly, like a jury, "Can you be rich and honest? Which is more important, truth or success? Can you redeem the past?" I answered, "For the rich, yes. For the honest, yes. At the same time, only if your why is heavier than your status. Because the world will pay you for speed, but it's unlikely for your conscience. And then you'll have to pay yourself." They laughed and frowned honestly. I saw myself in them. That guy from Boston who thought money was armor. It turns out that armor rusts from the inside out if you don't take it off. One day I met Ida on the waterfront. "Well, what's the truth?" I asked. She nodded toward the horizon. "Like the ocean line. You can see it, but you can't reach it. But that's no reason not to sail." We sat in silence, listening to the boats. I thought about Ezra. He's been convicted, but he's appealing. About Kyle. He's re-enrolled and works as an engineer in a nonprofit lab. About Connor. He wrote me a letter, a real one, on paper, that had one sentence. We could really do anything if we knew what we couldn't do. I put the letter next to my electric bills and felt that it was my most valuable asset. That evening I walked into the empty hall of the former campus. On the wall hung a sign with the new rules we had created with the trust. "The freedom to innovate ends where the risk of living without choice begins." I touched the metal with my fingers and felt my heart respond not with pain, but with work. Grace wrote, "Our son wants to see your new workshop." I replied, "It is still empty, but the door is open." And that, "open," sounded like a prayer against the past, which loves to close itself so much. The next morning, I woke up to the patter of rain on the windowsill. I opened my computer and began to write a document. Not a business plan, but a charter of slow responsibility for engineers, investors, and the media. Speed is not the goal. The goal is life. I wrote this sentence and realized that it is worth more than the millions that once shook the rockets of my ego. The finale is not like a salute, but rather like a cold morning light that does not ask whether you are ready or not. Is truth more important than success? Today, I believe, success without truth is only a loud shadow. Can the past be redeemed? Only by working on those who come after you. I was a rich man who lost his wealth and found weight. And if the stars really whisper something to us from above, then only one thing. Do not build empires that cannot accommodate human life. And if you have already built one, disassemble it, remake it, and do not be ashamed to live among the ruins until they grow into handrails for others.